everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our webinar with Liz Fusco and David from Gutzy. We'll just get started here as people start filtering in. With Liz, she'll go over her background and David will go over his background. And then Liz has a little presentation for us today. And then we'll take questions throughout. So we'll take questions in real time. So if you want to just send your questions through the Q&A button at the bottom, we can take them throughout the presentation. So it's more of an interactive webinar rather than just watching a PowerPoint. So we'll keep the conversation going, and we love as many questions as you have. So welcome. So Liz, if you want to start, go for it.
Hi, everybody. Some of you might recognize me, just making sure I'm not muted. Some of you might recognize me. I've been working with US Rowing since September of 2016 as a full-time employee, but I worked with them for about 2 years prior to that in the lead up to the Rio Olympics. I'm currently on furlough, but doing some creative work with some different organizations like Gutzy in order to continue to get the message out about nutrition and health, especially at a time like this. So excited to talk to you all today with a great group of co-panelists, and looking forward to it.
Great. And David, if you want to share how Gutzy came about, how you got to where you are today.
Very briefly, very briefly. So I'm David Istier, founder and CEO of Gutzy Organic. Been in the US now for 14 years. Prior to that, I was in England for a few years, but I'm French, born in France. And I moved to the US to launch very healthy food innovation from Europe to America. And then the first fruit squeezers, which is Go-Go Squeeze, I actually launched it for a French company. And while at Go-Go Squeeze, a lot of parents were like, well, you know, we kind of we eat our kids' stuff. Like, why is that not something for us adults a bit more functional? And that's how Gutzy kind of came about. And we started with an adult pouch. So
we actually, we got in touch with Gutzy several years ago, reached out to David, and he was really generous and sent over a lot of Gutzy pouches. And we actually, my intern and I took turns driving to the warehouse in Pennsylvania to pick them up for the whole summer. And we would take one of the US Rowing trucks and fill it to the absolute brim. And I would stuff it in the freezers and, you know, show the athletes how to incorporate them into their training and recovery. And they would last a few weeks. They were a really popular snack. We definitely shared some with our office team. You know, we always have a little bit of snacks for the team as well. So Gutzy's been supporting us, you know, in a lot of ways for a very long time. And yeah, we're just grateful for that. I wanted to give everyone an update on what's been going on with me. I haven't been in Princeton working with the team. I actually drove back to Vermont in early to mid-March, and I've been working on a friend of mine's farm. We are working on some organic farming techniques, and as you can see by these apples, organic farming is, you know, it's a hit or miss practice, but we're using these right now, harvesting them for cider. We had a great run of blueberries this summer, and we still have a lot of peppers and kale, and I've just been growing a lot of food and creating some web content. So that's what's been going on with me.
Liz, maybe you will sell us some apples at some point as well. You know?
Oh, absolutely. They are really delicious. I picked a perfect one off the tree today.
Nice.
Okay. And David?
All right. So what's been happening with us at Gutzy? Obviously, we, you know, I think we've all been affected by COVID-19. And initially, it was a bit tough in March, April, a little bit in May for us. Some retailers stopped ordering our product and so on. But since that, what we've seen is, if you see on the top left, like a lot of trends post-COVID are obviously about searches for gut healthy and immunity product. People are looking for more functional product that protects them. And especially also an increased search, for example, on Google with the word prebiotic, which is what we have in our product. Which Liz will talk about in a bit. So, you know, we're already on the trend with our product. In the meantime, while we were struggling, We also kind of given donation to our community. We did some stuff with New York Hospital where we gave to the healthcare workers 6,000 Gutzys around New York. We also did some giveaways online for nurses with other brands like Krat and Bragg's apple cider vinegar, and to kind of support people that were at the front line during that time. And recently we also expanded our distribution. We are expanding our distribution in the East, a little bit on the West, and the big thing is we are now available on Amazon as well, which is great because a lot of people around the country keep asking us where do we find Gutzy, and it's often there are in areas where we're not there yet. And we also doing a bit of advertising with Growing Magazine, which is fun. So it's been an interesting time for sure.
Yeah. When you said apple cider vinegar, have you guys ever pickled with apple cider vinegar?
I have not.
Yeah. It's not as good as white vinegar.
I like it.
Pickles.
Yeah, I like it if you use enough like garlic and like other aromatic herbs. Like I like to put fennel in there. Funky things
Liz
like
is a fancy
jalapeno.
pickling.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's another good ferment.
Yeah. And Liz is going to talk about the GI health, and we have a nice diagram here.
All right, so we're going to get right into it. Really, when we're talking about like what is gut health, ultimately it's about keeping a balanced composition of gut bacteria. And through having that good balance, because you'll never have no bad bacteria, right? It's a balance. It can strengthen your immune system. Research has shown that in elite athletes, but even in general populations, it can help prevent respiratory illnesses. I want to make sure everyone's aware that it's not diseases that it's preventing. Let's see. Sam, you want to switch your screen?
Yeah.
Can we? Or no, not the view, but just, I think it's stuck on you. I don't think it's on the person who's talking right now.
Oh, how about that?
Hello? Hello, hello?
Can you hear me?
Hello? I can hear you. Yeah, we can just keep going.
Can you see yourself?
Oh, they can see me. Okay, great.
Okay,
That's all that matters.
Okay.
I don't need to see myself.
Okay, great.
All right, so it doesn't prevent diseases. I think this is important to say. So while it can strengthen your immune system and it can make you, more able to fight off and prevent the illnesses from occurring, and perhaps to have a more robust immune response to an infection, it's not going to keep you from getting COVID. Like I said, it does combat infection and fight harmful bacteria. So some of the reasons why you might have a change in the gut bacteria composition could be in really prolonged or very intense periods of training, which can also be stressful. Perhaps you're also traveling. Intense training makes you more prone to illness, being more fatigued. You can kind of see how the disruptions can all be somewhat related to each other. Antibiotic use, that's a tough one, because if you have a bacterial infection that can be treated by antibiotics, it's important to take those. And they're generally, they tend to wipe out a lot of different types of bacteria, including the harmful ones. So consuming prebiotics and probiotics to help repopulate the gut after taking antibiotics is an important thing that can make an impact on the gut health. And then poor water quality. I'm sure we know there are parts of the country that don't have access to safe drinking water. And some of the symptoms of having a dysbiosis of the gut can be different GI things like constipation, diarrhea, even so much as vomiting, most commonly abdominal pain, cramping, IBS, IBD-like symptoms.
So going off the poor water quality, Liz, I know back in Rio, there was a lot of talk about the water quality, and was there anything that your team and you did leading up to Rio that prevented or saved the health of the athletes going into the Olympics?
Well, we can't say for sure that we saved it, but we were fortunate that no one got sick while we were there. We did take a host of different precautions. We had team members from the Olympic and Paralympic Committee traveling to Rio testing the water. So we knew what was in it and what the concentrations were in real time. And we also did a really lengthy probiotic trial with the athletes where we actually had them testing different types of probiotics, different strain formulations, varied amounts to find like a dose and a brand that they felt comfortable taking. And that took place over a course of about a year, which, you know, implementing any supplement, you know, in the long term should take a while to figure out. And so we had them, you know, the majority of the team was taking a probiotic supplement for the weeks leading up to the event and during it. And then we had a lot of different precautions while we were there to prevent from cross-contamination. And one of those was actually, I set up a full-scale kitchen across the street from the venue. And we had a gym there where athletes could come right over from the lake, take their dirty clothes off, get clean, come over and have a nice recovery meal that was rich in prebiotic fibers and probiotics from foods like yogurts. So we definitely took a pretty aggressive approach with doing what we could there.
Okay. And probiotics. There's Molly. She's one of our national team athletes. She's a superstar.
Yep, she's pretty awesome. Yeah, Molly's just recovering after a session on the water in Chula Vista here. So starting off with probiotics, I think this is the term that people are most familiar with. These are the actual live and active cultures. These are the bacterial cultures that when you take them in, when you eat them, they directly increase the concentration because they colonize the gut and then they start to multiply and make friends with all the bacteria around them. This helps to prevent the overgrowth of bad bacteria, which we've talked about all the different side effects of that. And then there's a little bit more detail in this description here about how if we're trying to take an aggressive approach, like you know, enhance someone's ability to fight off an infection, then we might consider taking something like a supplement, especially if there's also hard training and travel and stress and all of those other things combined. But I will say that there is actually a food product that you can achieve that amount of CFU. And it's typically fermented yogurt drinks, actually, because the bacteria continue to multiply while they're inside the bottle. Great. And Molly, actually, one more thing on that. Molly's getting both prebes and probes because she's mixing her Gutzy pouch. Yeah, she mixed it in with the yogurt, which is another like team favorite thing to do. They actually keep them in the freezer, so the Gutzy's like kind of frozen. So it's sort of like a yogurt slushy on a hot day. And then, you know, I had to put a Chris Rock in there for the team. Benefits of probiotics. Like I said before, the upper respiratory tract infection in athletes is shown to decrease the frequency and the duration of those infections. It can help your body to combat infections in the common cold, improve your digestion. Research has shown that it can help you to produce a lesser allergic response, help fighting allergies. You know, one of the things that we don't talk a lot about is how those gut bacteria can help you to actually absorb vitamins and minerals. So it really is a symbiotic relationship with all these little beings. And then obviously being used to treat diarrhea and IBS, especially after something like a course of antibiotics.
So Liz, do you recommend doing any type of probiotic or prebiotic kind of diet before you go traveling? Because I know like a lot of diseases spread like in airplanes, and when you're traveling, your immune system is affected that way. So I didn't know, especially with the athletes when they're going over to World Cups or World Champions, if you do anything different before traveling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the kind of central tenets of sports nutrition is that, you know, you're meeting people where they are at. So the athletes are choosing how aggressive of an approach they want to take with probiotic supplementation prior to travel. And that can be based on a lot of different things. Some athletes have a higher risk of getting sick when they're traveling. Some of them just have experience with having more GI issues, having more upper respiratory tract infections, and they want to try to take a more aggressive approach. And then there's another camp of athletes that doesn't feel that they have a different risk or that they benefit necessarily from probiotic supplementation. I think that the research is new and it's evolving, and we'll find out a lot more, I think, about the different strains of bacteria and which prebiotic fibers specifically stimulate those ones, and also how that differs from person to person, because the foods that you eat influence the type of bacteria that grows in your gut. So the type of probiotic that you take should also reflect the difference from person to person. So athletes make that decision themselves. And, we talk about how important fermented foods are. So I think there is a general team consensus of consuming fermented food products and definitely consuming prebiotic foods. But it's absolutely, their choice and individualized as it should be when we travel. But I do recommend a supplement for about 2 weeks prior to travel in athletes that are illness prone. And that supplement contain, first of all, that it have an NSF certified label. So we know that it's clean, contains what it says it does. And that it contains at least 5 to 10 billion CFUs, but most products contain around 25 billion. So you're usually covered.
And I think we have another question here. So if I stop sharing.
Yeah.
Ben said, what are good sources of probiotics for people on a plant-based diet? This is a great question. I have a whole family full of vegans. So
yeah, that's an awesome question. Actually, there are a ton of fermented foods that are good sources. If you want to actually skip to the next slide, Sam, I can talk while we're on that one.
Great.
Because I think there's some examples on there.
Let's see.
And then while we're pulling this up, I had another person ask if probiotics are approved by the FDA. That's such an awesome question. A probiotic supplement, since it is a supplement, it is not FDA approved, as no supplement is. And that's why it's so important to have that third-party NSF certification. And the reason why I typically go with NSF is because they're the most stringent third-party testing agency. They actually test every batch of product that has that label on it. But probiotics from a general sense are actually live and active things. So to kind of shift to Ben's question about probiotics for people on a plant-based diet, miso is, miso soups. I actually really like this sweet white miso, the far right one in the photograph. It's just kind of light, and it's good for our palates, our American palates, nice and sweet. Kimchis, which you can also make at home. They're nice and spicy and crunchy. Kombuchas, sauerkrauts. There are actually a lot of vegan sources of probiotics. Anything that's fermented, really. Anything that's like sauerkraut, or even fermented pickles, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, my mom gets all the time. She went vegan, I think 1.5 years ago now, and she gets the vegan hot dogs, and she puts sauerkraut on the vegan hot dogs. So
yeah, there you go.
Perfect.
And actually, some of those vegan hot dogs can be made with other foods that have probiotics in them, like tempeh and tofu.
Oh yeah.
So someone
like
asked,
double.
I know, I just someone asked, like, you're mentioning yogurt drinks a lot, which I know it's because I'm kind of obsessed with yogurt drinks. It's just a personal thing, especially this.
We lost Liz.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there we go.
I just had a scam caller. Especially this New York brand. I don't know. It's just, they're easy to grab. But yeah, I do love my dairy products.
And just to rebound on you guys regarding plant-based diet and source of probiotics, I think for me during COVID, I kind of tested different strategies with food, and I lost 15 pounds. I didn't go like full vegan and whatnot, but I included, obviously, Gutzy is part of my diet, but I also included a lot of the food list that you mentioned, like sauerkraut, kimchi, drinking kombucha, and then adding to that, which we'll talk about in a bit, with very leafy greens and things that are full of prebiotics as well, and combining all those things together make it very powerful.
Definitely. Liz, can you see the Q&As? I can't access them.
Yeah, I'm actually skimming through them, and I'm enjoying just kind of scanning through it.
I can see them too, actually, Sam.
Oh, great. Yeah. If you guys want to look, I can't click on the Q&A button if I'm sharing my screen.
That's perfect. So someone asked if there's probiotics that have research behind them showing a benefit for aerobic performance. I think that's a really good question. And I would say actually specifically, lactobacillus strains are the strains that have shown to decrease the incidence and severity of upper respiratory tract infections. I don't know that there has been any evidence to support, at least compellingly, that they improve aerobic performance per se. But if you don't get sick and you are able to train with quality, and not having to take that time off of your training block, then I could say indirectly that they could help improve aerobic performance, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think we're ready to move on to prebiotics.
Great.
I took this picture on March 5th or 6th. Had no idea what was going to happen. I was walking down the end of the street in Ocean Beach, San Diego. Anyways.
And that's when it went all downhill from there.
Anyways, prebiotics. So prebiotics are really why we're here. And prebiotics are one of my favorite things to talk about. They're not the live cultures. They are actually the types of carbohydrates, the types of fibers that we can't digest. But what we do when we consume them is that we're actually feeding those bacteria, the gut bacteria that are already there. So it's really, the term can be considered, some people call it synbiotics, like with an N, when you're consuming something that has both prebiotics and probiotics, like Molly's recovery snack.
And this one's actually my favorite flavor, out of the botanicals collection. If you guys like ginger, highly recommend this one.
Delicious.
Yum.
Yeah.
Passion fruit too.
Yeah.
Okay, I had to put this in because I don't know if anyone saw this, but I did.
This is awesome.
I did an interview on Gutzy's Instagram a few weeks ago. And David, I've got to say, this is just epic. And can I ask when we're going to be running the Liz Fusco line of Gutzy's?
Well, soon, I guess. We're going to have to include leeks and onions and artichokes and so on.
Liz, what flavor would you be?
I would be onion leek.
Okay, David, I don't think you're going to get much sales off the Liz flavor. I'm sorry.
So these are some pictures actually that I took today from my garden. So really what you're looking for with prebiotics, the things that are higher in them are the roots, the bottom parts, that those harder, more roughage kind of parts of vegetables, garlic, leeks, onion, things that don't break down completely. Artichoke, obviously not eating like the part of artichoke that you don't eat, but like the inside of it also has some prebiotic fiber. Bananas are really interesting because they actually, when they're unripe, they're very high in a prebiotic fiber called inulin. And as they ripen, the inulin breaks down and it becomes a simpler carbohydrate. And oftentimes I'll recommend that athletes, if they're having a carbohydrate right before exercise, that it be a ripe banana specifically so that it's easy to digest. But the more green, more unripe bananas are really high in inulin. Asparagus, greens, whole grains. There's a lot of chicory root in different types of bars and cereals. And that's another very, prebiotic rich thing. There's a ton of different kinds, and I think we can move to the next slide now. Here's another picture of me with a root. There's a few other types of prebiotic fibers too. There's one called beta-glucan. I know Gutzy has a few varieties that have like an oat grain component, and that's what beta-glucan comes from. There's also some fructose They're called fructooligosaccharides. Those are actually from the fibers that are in different types of fruits. There's GOS, which comes from, again, lactose and dairy foods. There's even some things that you might find on, let's say, like if you buy those like lower fat, higher protein ice creams or something, they use some things as thickeners or modifiers. Guar gum is a modifier, a thickener, and that's actually a prebiotic, which I thought was really interesting. And then resistant starch, which is in corn. So really, you know, all of those things are complicated, right? No one's going to remember all the names of those things. But I think the general sense here is that fruits and vegetables and roots and things that have roughage feed the gut bacteria and help them to multiply and to help you have a stronger immune system.
So Liz, you said ice cream that's lower fat, higher protein. What kind is that?
There was a friend of mine who I actually sailed with at the University of Rhode Island, and she started a company called Proyo. Do you remember those?
Proyo, yeah.
It was a company that had sent in like a bunch of like high protein frozen yogurts, and it's like a consistency that you can achieve if you are trying to cut the fat out, because fat is what gives ice cream its like creamy consistency, deliciousness.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're gonna take that wonderfulness away, then you can actually, you know, replace it with these types of fibers, which is kind of cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd rather eat ice cream than a protein bar any day.
So this is kind of cool. This is actually a ginger root that we grew. And it didn't get very big, but again, I'm just kind of just showing everybody some good photos from all the different types of prebiotic foods that we get. No, unfortunately, no free speed from probiotics, sadly.
Did someone just put in a question?
Yeah, but it might save you money on tissues. Oh yeah, so these are some really cool things. The one on the left is called walking stick kale. It's a kind of like a collard green. And the cool thing about growing kale, I don't know where everyone is, but I'm in zone 5, which is it's cold up here. We're gonna get some frost tonight. And we can grow this for the next like 2 months. Growing kale in your backyard is actually really easy, and it can actually freeze completely. And some of those prebiotic fibers, when the plant thaws after a freeze, will turn into sugar and actually make the kale a sweeter tasting green. So peppers, this is another thing that's really high in prebiotic fiber, especially if you're consuming the seed. So this is a type of pepper called a shishito. It's a Japanese style pepper, and it also has a really long growing season. If you see these in the grocery store, they're savory, they're not spicy, really delicious. And yeah, they just grow really prolifically. And because of the fact that you're actually eating this pepper whole, you're not taking any of the seeds out. Those seeds are another source of prebiotic fiber.
Wow. Nice shirt, Liz.
Thanks. Oh, hey, I should have worn it again.
I know, you've been matching. And any more questions, guys?
Oh, there's actually one more thing that I want to say before we turn off. It's the last slide. Yeah, so there's a lot of different types of prebiotic foods. I also think that grocery shopping is, and you know, a lot of things are hard right now. And the fact that you can get a product that tastes good, is shelf stable for an extended period of time, you know, is worth buying, and is easy to access since it's on something like Amazon. Yeah, I enjoy their product. You know, we wouldn't be doing a joint webinar if we didn't support them, and really actually like it. So you should definitely give it a try. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, we're in weird times right now, and the NRF is raising money for our Road to Tokyo. That funding includes money for, you know, people like me to rejoin the team and get back to work. So you can make a big impact by making a donation to the National Rowing Foundation. And I look forward to having another webinar with you guys sometime soon.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. If you have any more, we have some questions coming in.
Oh, great.
Also, if you don't make it over to the grocery store anytime soon, and it happens to be event season, you can always stop by the U.S. rowing tent because we always have free Gutzys. Any event, they are our top pick and snack at all of our regattas. Okay.
So this is a great question about the best time of day to take a probiotic supplement. It kind of, my answer is always going to be, it depends. It depends on whether you're taking any other types of supplements or products. So typically the only time that you need to be extra careful is if you're taking an antibiotic. That's when I recommend that people take the probiotic as far apart from it as they can. So like as close to 12 hours apart as possible. There's not solid evidence really that makes an impact, but I think, just from a common sense perspective, we don't want to be taking antibiotics and probiotics at the same time. And then from a common sense perspective, maybe choosing to take it in a part of the day when you might be consuming a probiotic food or a prebiotic food. Taking it with food is a good idea, but the most important thing is that you remember. So choosing a time of day where you're going to consistently remember to take it with a probiotic, I would say, is probably the most important thing.
And it looks like Kimberly said Trader Joe's makes a low-fat, high-protein ice cream. So
nice.
That's awesome.
And I bet you it has guar gum in it.
Great. Any more questions out there for Liz or David? David, do you have any questions for Liz, or Liz, do you have any questions for David?
Actually, it's looking like we're getting some more flavor questions.
From Gutzy. Kiwi strawberry is a classic. You can't go wrong with that. When I'm handing them out at regattas, if you don't like ginger, because that's my go-to, I always am like, well, do you like strawberry?
The red one, yeah. The red one is the most popular.
The red. Based on sales, David, what do you see being the most popular?
Yeah, I mean, the strawberry kiwi kale is the most popular, and then we have the banana does pretty well for us. And then after that, the botanicals, really, the two botanicals, because obviously it's got the prebiotic, and also it's got the anti-inflammatory with the ginger and then the dandelion inside. So it's like a double whammy on those.
Yeah.
Sure.
And you guys.
Yeah, I guess that's another thing I can add too, is that, these foods that are high in prebiotic fiber also contain a ton of other healthy things like vitamin K, vitamin E, vitamin C, vitamin A, all different types of micronutrients. So, you think about it from the perspective of prebiotics, but really what you're getting is a lot more than that.
It's complete nutrition, yeah. I mean, to a degree, for sure.
Yeah. And it's so easy too. It's on the go. Like it was great at regattas too, because people are always walking past the vendor area, and I can literally just toss them a Gutzy and they're like, great. And it's nice and cool, especially in the summer. It's awesome snack.
Yeah, easy to pack into a rolling cooler.
Yes.
Yeah. And for people that don't have time to cook as well and stuff, we don't always have the time. I think our goal was to make it approachable and affordable for folks, and as an organic product. And the thing that people don't do compromise on is that it has to taste good. And I think that's our core offer, is that our product tastes pretty good and there's no added sugar. We try to keep it as clean as possible. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Actually, to address that, I want to answer Caroline's question, which is, do I recommend Gutzy only as a post-training snack, or is it a good pre-training snack as well? So I actually, for some people, they can tolerate pretty large amounts of fiber before a training session and not have any GI side effects. Generally speaking, if you have a slightly more sensitive stomach around training sessions, then I would recommend having higher fiber foods, which Gutzy falls into the category of, probably somewhere around like 2 or 3 hours before a training session. I will say that athletes do have them before training. Some athletes have them before training and feel perfectly fine. The next question too is, can you take too much, and overdo prebiotics and probiotics? Also great question. With prebiotics, it's very difficult to get too much unless you're taking a supplement, and it's typically the high dose supplements that can have side effects. But as I kind of alluded to before, everyone's gut microbiome is different and has different populations of these beneficial bacteria already. So some people may not need to take a probiotic supplement. And if they do, then there can be like certain types of bacterial overgrowth that can happen. Again, very uncommon, like very, very uncommon, and tends to be in high dose probiotic supplementation scenarios. With prebiotics, it is possible to overdo it because of the fact of the physiology of prebiotic fiber. Prebiotic fiber is fiber that we don't digest. So because of that, if we consume too high of a dose of it in one sitting, then we can have like maldigestion. Yeah, like we could have like, you know, especially with like prebiotic fiber heavy foods. We're talking like, you know, like diarrhea with no, you know, pieces, kind of not a lot of things being broken down. That's a sign of high prebiotic fiber intake. I would recommend chewing your food fully, but also balancing the types of fibers that you're consuming. So prebiotic fibers are insoluble, which means they are indigestible. And combining that with fibers that are soluble, like oats. So a lot of different foods actually contain both soluble and insoluble fiber. So sometimes if you have that maldigestion, then what you can do is try to consume more soluble fibers from foods like whole grains, from beans. Those things can actually help to balance your digestion. So yeah, keeping an eye on the.
And just to build on your comment, Liz, I think it's like everything, right? You try a certain amount, and then if it makes you feel okay, then you try a bit more and a bit more, and it's incremental, right?
The research actually is like around 12 grams is where you can have some GI side effect in one sitting. And I think in most of the Gutzy pouches, it's like 4 or 6 grams of.
It's 6 to 5 grams, so it's
5 or 6 grams.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just no pounding them, you know.
Yeah.
Just having
one
them
or two a
throughout
day.
the day.
Yeah.
2 or 3.
Yeah, exactly. 2 or 3. Yeah. So that's another really good question, though.
And I think there's also a question about if they have dairy in them, and we are plant-based, so there's no dairy in Gutzy Organic.
Yeah, and then I want to add too that you know, that's an interesting, when people say dairy, I think there's this like connection of like lactobacillus being dairy, but lactobacillus is just the type of bacteria. So there are kefirs, for example, water kefirs, coconut kefirs that contain lactobacillus bacterial strains. So, you know, don't feel like you have to avoid the lactobacillus types because you are following a plant-based diet.
Great. Did you see Joel's question?
Yes. So if anyone has any questions outside of prebiotics and probiotics, you can feel free to fill out my question form on my website. It's www.lizfood.com. You can also follow me on social media, Liz Food Co.
If you have any questions for them, you can contact Liz through her website. David, do you want to give them your email or a way for them to contact you if they have any Gutzy specific questions?
I think if they reach out to Liz, and then Liz, if you want to share any question that I can answer, you know.
Okay.
Awesome.
Perfect. And I think that's good. Happy hump day. We're almost at Friday. And I hope you guys all have a good night. Thanks for joining us, Liz and David.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. Nice hanging out with you all.
Bye.
Okay, guys. Bye.